Hello folks, here we are again, another fine, cool, damp, nasty morning in North Carolina. This beautiful second day of January 2021. Got a little presentation today. You might take it as a tutorial, you might not. None of what I do out here is the only way to do it. Like I've said so many times, if you want a blacksmith, get a hammer, get something to heat with, get something to hit on, and get to swinging, and figure it out yourself. But hopefully I can give somebody some tips that'll help them get started. This morning we're going to be working on a project. A young lady on Facebook had asked to see how I forge one of our herb choppers. Little simple project, shouldn't take too long, so that's what we're going to be working on. We'll be working some with the anvil, we'll be working some with the power hammer, and hopefully it comes out all right. Starting stock this morning will be 3/16 1084 high carbon steel. This piece is 1.25 inches wide. We are 5.25 inches long. And just to start, I've just cut it out, cleaned the edges a little bit, put a center dot at the 1.25 inch mark. So I'm going to have an 1.25 inch section here to isolate. That's very important. A little bit of math to tell you that if I isolate 1.25 inches, I should be able to draw this out to have enough of a tail to make the handle when this is finished. So, sometimes it works, sometimes I bugger it up. We'll see how it goes. If you like the video, if you enjoy the content, like and subscribe, be much appreciated. Leave us a comment if you want to see something in the future. And thank you very much. And here we are at the power hammer. I'm going to take my hack, my power hammer hack, find my center mark, and just start cutting down into the stock. I want to isolate that end so I can draw it out to make the tail of the herb chopper. Didn't quite get far enough that time, so I'll have to heat it back up and go at it again. One more time. There we go. Yep, got it that time. Hammer it back out flat. Just right. Now we'll move over to the anvil. So the first thing we're going to do is I want to knock the bit of steel down that I've isolated. Make sure I keep it flat and square. And I'm knocking it down so I can work the corners. You'll understand. Now I'm going to work those corners. Again, keep hammering, keep it flat. As I work those corners, it pushes that tail out longer. I'm actually pushing the steel down into itself and it's moving it out. And it's making the tail longer until I can draw it out to make the curl over the back of the blade. I could do this whole process on the anvil, but nope, we're going to the power hammer now. Now we'll get the steel hot, bring it over, and continue to work that tail out. See how the hammer blows are pushing it out lengthwise? Now each time the hammer hits and pushes it lengthwise, it also thickens the material. So I have to keep working it down to keep it the same thickness as the blade stock. I like to do most things by hand and hammer, but I will use the power hammer to break down large sections. I always go back and finish with the anvil. But I'll draw it out a little more on the power hammer. And one more heat. There we go. Keeping it thin. Knock it down a little, thin it out, and my camera fell over. That's all right. Through the magic of editing, I got rid of all the dirty words. Got everything lined back up. If only it could have just waited one more heat to fall over, we'd been all right, because this is my last heat, and then I'll go to the anvil to finish up. And as if by magic, we're back at the anvil. And I'm going to push the steel down to line it up with the blade and then start working it out. Start at the near edge, bring it down to the thickness I want. Go out to the end and work it down to a taper. Turn it sideways and make sure everything stays flat. And then we'll just keep working that out. And this time on this heat, I'm going to start really drawing it out. And what I'm doing is using the far edge of the anvil to fuller the tail. Fuller basically means that I'm knocking grooves into it. I'm using the corner of the anvil to fuller that tail and move the metal. Squeezes the metal down. And then I go back and knock the grooves out, and as the grooves are pushed down, it stretches it out. You'll really be able to see it here in another couple heats. Still fullering it out. There. See those grooves? Now we'll go back in the fire and knock them down flat and stretch it a little more. Remember, when I knock those grooves down flat, it pushes the steel back into itself and forces it to lengthen. So that's just part of the drawing out process. Anytime you make a groove in a piece of steel, it's called fullering. The grooves that are cut in knife blades that everybody calls a blood groove is actually called a fuller. Make sure everything's flat, even. One more heat. Nah. No more heats. Check the length. And yeah, that's good. Got a bit over twice my length, so I know I've got plenty to curl around and make the tail. this time out of the fire, it's time to work on the blade. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my bevel. If you'll notice, I have the back of the blade up off the anvil. I'm holding it at an angle and driving the steel down into itself, setting the bevel. I like to do that first set on the face of the anvil. If you don't have good hammer control, I would not recommend that because it's a good way to booger the face of your anvil. Here on this next heat, I'm going to work my bevel a little farther up, and I'm going to work it near the edge of the anvil. Now that lets me drive the angle in without having to worry about my hammer head making contact with the face of the anvil. And that's a great way to work any knife blade. Make sure everything is squared up in the way I want it, and back in the fire. We're just about done with the blade. Bring it out and give it a little brush up. Knock a little of the scale off and a little touch up to make sure that edge is exactly where I want it. Not much to do, just a little dressing the edge. Oh yeah, that's just about right. So now it's time to take it inside the grinding room and clean it up. And here we are, all cleaned up, a little rough grind, polished, ready to harden it, ready to curl the tail back around and make the handle. And that's the first process. First thing to do is go to the far edge of the anvil and knock down a little scroll. Just brushing it around with the hammer, keeping everything moving so I don't get a flat spot on my scroll. Make sure it's even. Yep, good enough. Back in the fire and turn it around. We'll come out this time and go to the horn and bend the tail back around. I'm working it a little bit at a time around the horn. If you're not careful, things can get a little bit out of whack, out of square. Better to correct them as you go than let them get too far gone and then try to straighten the whole mess up. So take your time, do it a little bit at a time. Work that loop around. Looking pretty good, looking pretty good. Getting a little colder than I want to be working it here. Just tap it and make sure it's square and back in the heat. Here we go, one more time, one more time. Still got to get that set the way I want it. It's really close. Square it up, tap it a couple times, bring it down even, straighten everything back up. Yep, looking pretty good. Nothing wrong with that. Ready for a heat treat, I do believe. Now I've got my oil can ready for the quench. And in we go, and I'm just quenching the edge. I only edge quench the herb choppers. And that quench is hardening the edge, but still leaving the tail part that's been curled around to make the little handle and the spine of the blade pretty well soft. So the edge is hard, it'll take a good sharp edge, it'll hold a good sharp edge, and it's strong because the spine is soft. And the tail's never been hardened, so we won't have to worry about it being brittle and breaking off in anybody's hand during use. Just gotta wait, can't hurry this part up. have to wait for the whole piece of steel to cool down below critical. Otherwise, if I take it out of the oil too soon, the heat from the spine and the tail will seep back down into the cutting edge and make it too soft again. Now, see that nice gray color? That's what we're looking for. I'm almost at the point where I can cool this thing off in the water and go to the grinding ring. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And there we go, cool to the touch, nice and hard on the edge, ready to be polished up and sharpened. Not a bad little project. Here's our finished project, all finished up, shaven sharp, polished, and ready to go to work in the customer's kitchen. Here we are back in the leather shop. I hope y'all enjoyed that little project. Hope maybe it gave some of you some ideas for some things you could incorporate into your own work. If you like the video, be sure and like and subscribe. And if you've got any ideas for future contents, just leave in the comments section. We'd be happy to hear from you. Or join us over on Facebook and we'll talk to you there. Hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for watching.